What the Sam Hill's going on here?
The Rewatch Podcast presents the Lois and Clark Rewatch, dedicated to the series Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman on ABC. Join us each week as we investigate the origins of the Man of Steel and uncover crime in Metropolis. Send your feedback to the Rewatch Podcast at gmail.com. Join us on Facebook at facebook.com/Rewatch Podcast or follow us on Twitter at Rewatch Pod.
Oh, hey! Let's get back to it.
Welcome back to the Rewatch Podcast and our Lois and Clark Rewatch. I'm Cory.
And I'm Terry Kaiser. Oh, just kidding. Psych. Too bad for you.
Wow, wow.
It's sad.
Lame. But regardless, thank you for joining us, everyone. We're here discussing 2 more episodes of Lois and Clark, and this week's headline reads, Cold, anyone? I'm cold with the absence of Terry Kaiser.
See, I'm never cold. That's my superpower. I'm always warm, you know? Anyone who's near me, they always feel warm, you know, because I radiate this heat. I really do. It's a great in the fall and winter. Trust my girlfriend, she knows. But, you know, in the summertime, that's like my kryptonite.
No, we're here discussing the dad who came in from the cold and Tempest, anyone? So getting straight into it, our first episode discussion, The Dad Who Came In From the Cold, written by David Simpkins and directed by Alan J. Levy. And this originally aired on January 14th of 1996.
Trevanian's head of covert operations for the NIA. We think he could be dangerous, willing to use the agency for his own purposes.
The NIA's gotten so powerful, they have a blank check to pull off any kind of espionage they want. It's not a good time to have a loose cannon on board.
But, you have no hard proof.
Not unless this is it.
Collins mentioned Saturday noon. Something big might be happening.
Well, that only gives you a couple of days.
Whatever's in here is locked in the computer's memory, and it's in code to boot.
Well, you know, they have a couple of those data recovery outfits here in town.
Chief, this material's way too sensitive.
We need somebody we can trust. Somebody who knows RAM chips from...
Strudel.
Ask and you shall receive.
Oh, Lois, I lost that little response card, but I'll definitely be at the wedding. I can't believe in 3 weeks you guys are...
What? Jimmy? Shut the door.
The series of articles about corruption in the NIA being written by Lois and Clark have brought them many accolades, but also trouble in the way of a source they used being car-bombed right outside their front steps. A woman named Sweet Tart shows up asking questions, but Lois and Clark say nothing, keeping secret the laptop the man gave them before he died. Perry assigns Jimmy the task of decrypting the laptop, but Jimmy's estranged dad shows up for a frosty reception, trying to make nice by inviting Lois and Clark to dinner with them. While Jack claims it's his construction business that kept him from maintaining his relationship with Jimmy and his mother, the truth is he is actually a James Bond-style spy and has been sent on a mission by a man named Trevanian to retrieve the laptop from Lois and Clark. As he goes about bugging their computers and apartments, the man who sent him on the mission, Trevanian, a man who has his fingers in multiple organizations and government, turns out to be corrupt and is trying to eliminate the head of the NIA as well as several other high-ranking officials in an attempt to become the sole leader of them all. Jimmy, having cracked the laptop's code, has learned of this plan as well as the weapon Trevanian plans to use to take down the plane with the government officials on, which he reveals to his father after he comes clean about his real job to him. He helps Jimmy escape from one of Trevanian's men but gets captured along with Lois by Sweet Tart and taken to Trevanian, who is ready to launch his weapon. Clark, having no luck in finding Jimmy's dad himself, gets a call from him, to which Superman answers and using one of his spy devices tracks down where Jimmy and Lois are being held captive, saving Jimmy from a deadly fall and saving the plane that Trevanian's weapon hit. Clark confides in Lois that he's worried about being there for his own family, given his other jobs as superhero. Lois assures him that it wasn't Jimmy's dad's job that prevented him from being there for his family, but rather the man himself, and that Clark is ready for that responsibility no matter what his job is.
I got the basic codes,
It's great, Jimmy. You are the best.
but I'm gonna need more power to read the disk, so I'm gonna head down to Star Labs and hook into their mainframe.
Oh, hold on a second, Jimmy. Listen, I need to talk to you about your dad.
What about my dad?
We've been checking him out.
We? Who's we?
Me, mostly. Anyway.
You know what? No offense, CK, but I don't want to talk about
Jimmy,
this.
we gotta talk about this sometime.
No, we don't.
Jimmy, he's not who he says he is.
Sure he is. He's my father.
What if there's more to it than that?
I don't believe this. You've been digging up dirt on my father? When do you quit? Is everything a story to you?
Jimmy, would you just listen?
No! Maybe he's not the best guy in the world, but he's my father, all right?
We think he's with the NIA.
What? All these years? No way. He would have told me.
He lied to you, Jimmy. He lied to you, and he lied to us.
I don't believe that.
He bugged my apartment, Jimmy, and Lois's. And we think he's the guy who broke in here last night.
Oh, and what, fought his own son? Let him shoot at me? Would you cut it out? Look, maybe he's not a Boy Scout like you, but he's no killer, all right?
Jimmy.
I defended you to him.
Okay, so let's investigate this episode further.
All right, so these all come from iReactions comparing the script to the episode. And in the beginning, you know, when Jack is going to get in the car with the beautiful woman at the end of the teaser scene there, Trevanian says, Jack, now remember, this is a level 5 operation, so if there's any issues, and he said, I know the rules, gotten rid of, because later on, I think, wasn't it Jimmy who said what a level 5 meant? Or some other character explained it, so we didn't need it spelled out here in the beginning as well. So extraneous information. Now, when Sweet and Jack are bugging the apartment, you know, they're in the one room, and he says, "Okay," and now the bedroom, and she says, "With pleasure," you know, and he's like, "You never change, do you?" And then she says, "Do you, Jack? Trevanian thinks you've gone soft." You know, and he ignores the question and just keeps bugging the apartment. Interesting little exchange there, but not really needed. You know, we know that Trevanian thinks he's gone soft. We don't need, you know, and it doesn't really change the story any, you know, if Jack thinks that, you know, Trevanian also thinks the same thing. So it doesn't matter. There was a neat little scene at the very end. Jimmy has the whole interchange with his dad, you know, about he loves him, and he says he likes that his dad worries about him, you know, that whole thing. You know, when Jimmy says he loves him, he follows it up by saying, "Hey, I think your glow light on your watch is broken." Dad looks at it, and then the watch is glowing blue for truth, you know, so showing that Jimmy really means it when he says he loves him. Well, that was nice.
Oh, yeah, I do like that.
Yeah, nice little end there. There was a scene, if you remember, when Jack catches up to Jimmy, you know, and says, "Hey, give me the computer, you know, what's on the computer," or whatever. Jimmy has an extra line where he says, "Are you going to kill me?" You know, and Jack says, "No." And then Jimmy says, "Are you a good guy or a bad guy?" You know, so it's just a little extra line in there about gonna kill him, I guess, you know. I found this on the wiki. According to the Superman comics, Jimmy was raised by his mother, and his father had disappeared on a military mission, at least in the comics. So they took that, you know, from the comics, where the father was not around.
Interesting. Like, just taking a little bit of liberty.
Yeah. And then, of course, the episode title, I thought I had recognized it. It alludes to the film The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, which I've never seen, but that's where they got the episode title from.
Did not know that.
Yeah, and then finally, now this one I thought of too, when they revealed the guy who got car bombed out front. I was thinking about this. His name is Bud Collins, but I was thinking that's really close to Bud Collyer, and Bud Collyer was the guy who played Superman on the Superman radio shows back in the 40s. So I was thinking it might have been an allusion to him as well, and that's what I found that on the wiki as well. So I was like, oh yeah, maybe that was. You know, they could have just used Bud Collyer. You know, I don't know why they didn't and changed it to Collins. I don't know if they were even thinking of that, but it would have been nice if they had been thinking about that.
Well, at the same time, I mean, it's not much of a character. He kind of...
It's not. It's not.
He's introduced in his dying scene, so...
Right, exactly.
Is that much of a tribute to a guy who played Superman?
It's not, but I thought, you know, if you're going to pick a name out, you know, why not pick one that means something to the mythos, you know?
Why not?
Yeah.
Trevanian's downfall was the perfect topper to the Planet's NIA series. Good work, you two. Well, actually, I should say all four of you. Jack, I had you pegged as a pretty rotten egg. Please, accept my apologies.
Don't apologize, Perry. I am a rotten egg. It's helpful in my line of work.
Mine, too.
I'm afraid I gotta run.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like I'm finally getting to know you after all these years, and now I gotta dash off to...
Where? You can't tell me.
Jimmy, they offered to bring me inside, give me a desk job. And that's something I could...
Dad, that's not you. Somebody else's dad. Not mine.
But I could try.
Listen, you just try to be my dad, and that'll probably be enough.
Okay.
All right, so let's get into the main story and today's lead, Dad's deception and disclosure. And yeah, we do start with this car bomb going off outside of Lois's apartment, of course. Honestly, I was a bit confused about Bud Collins' relationship to Lois and Clark. I thought maybe he was a work colleague, like a reporter. You kind of say in your synopsis that maybe he was some sort of NIA agent. I'm not sure.
After going through the whole episode and everything, I figure he was someone who probably worked at the NIA and was a mole for them. You know, he was like their secret source or something. I don't know who he, was in the organization, if he was higher up or if he was like a lower level one or something like that. I don't know. But yeah, I think he was in there.
He passes over this pretty well smashed up and burnt laptop. Also a brick of a laptop, by the way. Did you get a load of that thing?
Yeah, it was pretty big. Yeah.
Yeah, and he says the word Trevanian before dying when suddenly this super sexy NIA agent shows up in a tight leotard.
Right.
And introduces herself as Sweetheart. And not for a second did I think, could she be a real NIA agent? And it turns out she is. By the way,
she is.
Which is bizarre. But yeah, anyway, the actress, we know her, Una Damon.
Mm-hmm.
She was in the first Cro-Mag episode of Sliders.
Yes.
She was, what was it, like Jill or Julia or something? It was a J name.
Yeah, it was. I can't remember now, but yeah, it was something like that.
Yeah, she was the interpreter for the Cro-Mags.
Yeah, it was an yeah. She was all right over there, but she was very like wooden because that's the character that she had to play. So it's interesting to see her now where she has her full range of, emotions to pull from.
Yeah, interesting character. And she leads us to learn more about what Trevanian is all about.
You know what I did like about this is when she first shows up and like she pulls out the gun, nobody move. And Superman's standing there. He's like, new in town. It's like, don't you know who I am? I mean, what are you doing? Calm down.
Yeah.
It was pretty funny.
And she plays it like really suspect as well. Because, she introduces herself as an NIA agent, which she is. But she's like, did he have anything? Did he say anything to you? And they're just like, no, because Superman's hid the laptop by throwing it in the air.
Which I liked. When he did that, like, I must have looked away or looked down at my notes or something for a second. And then when I looked back, I just thought, oh, the laptop's gone. I didn't realize where it went. And then all of a sudden I hear it falling from the sky. I'm like, what? Wait, what happened there? I had to go back and see where he throws it up in the sky. It was a good idea.
And as soon as she hears the cop sirens coming, boom, she's out of there. And I'm like, that is like really suspect. I mean, seriously.
Yeah, very much.
So she's like recruiting this James Bond-ish type character.
Right.
And it turns out that Trevanian is the head of the NIA. Okay, I really got confused here for about 10 minutes. I'm taking notes, and I look up the character on IMDb, and it just says Trevanian. And I'm thinking, is that like a nationality or something? He's the Trevanian. Yeah, the guy from Trevania.
Right.
And it took me a good 10 minutes to realize, no, his name is Trevanian.
Yeah. No, I got that right away. That's pretty funny, though. It would make sense in Lois and Clark where they make up, country names all the time, that he's from Trevania, and he's the Trevanian.
Exactly. We've been getting into a lot of fake countries lately, so.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's a strange name. And they recruit this guy, and they tell him that Lois and Clark have been selling secrets, like NIA secrets, because they've been doing this full coverage of the NIA or something, right? So he's just like, oh, okay, cool, so you need them taken out. That's fine. I can do that.
So we know right away that Trevanian's a bad guy because we know that hasn't been happening.
Exactly.
And I am glad that they went somewhere because throughout many episodes, we've had references to how they've been writing articles on the NIA. So it's nice that they actually took it somewhere to a conclusion.
Yeah, I really appreciated that. It was, it's not just, some arbitrary reason that Lois and Clark have to be killed, which we've also been getting a lot lately.
Yeah.
And so he gives them like this Saturday at noon deadline, which I was surprised when they came back later. I was like, oh, that's right. Yeah, we had that deadline, didn't we?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And they need to decrypt Bud's laptop and decide to use Jimmy's expertise to do this. Because if Virtually Destroyed taught us anything, Jimmy is a computer whiz.
Uh-huh. I thought that was funny. You know, like they got this highly sensitive information and they rely on Jimmy to decrypt it all. They have Star Labs, you know, which Jimmy does go to later to use, but instead they decide, you know, well, let's just have the kid take a crack at it.
It's like using Dr. Lane instead of Dr. Klein.
Exactly.
When Superman was dying. Exactly. He's like, okay. We're just giving our regular character something to do. And then, of course, the spy turns out to be Jack Olsen, Jimmy's father. And he takes the opportunity of visiting Jimmy at the planet to go ahead and bug Lois and Clark's computers. Like, this was strange, because he kind of just strolls into the Daily Planet.
Right.
Hasn't introduced himself to anybody. He's just walking around, bugging computers, and then introduces himself. Like, you think somebody would have seen him, like, hovering around computers and putting things on them and going, who the hell are you?
Yeah, exactly. I was like... I guess I understand because, you know, Lois and Clark are in the room over there and everyone else, it's always like a flurry of activity. You know, everyone's always wandering around, going from place to place, you know, in the Daily Planet. So I could see how maybe he'd be overlooked because there is no receptionist. There's no one keeping track of who's coming in. People are like, for the whole last 2.5 seasons, people have been walking in and out of the Daily Planet whenever they want, willy-nilly. So not too unreasonable to assume it keeps happening.
But he's like the uber spy. He's just bugging everything. And he invites Jimmy to dinner. He wants to catch up and then takes the opportunity to invite Lois and Clark. So they'll be out of their apartments. They can go ahead and bug their apartment. And Sweet also fits in with a lie detector, which is kind of extraneous. They don't really do much with it. And that's kind of why I like that thing in the investigation about, you know, it was kind of like a nice little ending where he realized his son actually does love him or something, you know, just
yeah, that's true.
An absolute reason to have that, you know?
Right. Yeah, it's nice that it would come back like that. That was, true. Very true.
It could have just been, he's a spy. He knows when people lie to him or something like that. Like, yeah, it's just like all this gadgety stuff. Maybe it's a little too cliche James Bond for me.
Yeah, you know, this was the era, it was Pierce Brosnan, right? So it kind of fits in with those movies, you know?
Yeah.
I like it.
And they end up going to dinner, of course, and Clark discovers that Jack isn't really who he claims to be after he uses his X-ray vision on the guy and like sees that he's like packing heaps of weapons.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I know you're a bit suspect on this guy, but really, why did you X-ray vision him? I don't know. It was just like, how did he leap to do that?
Well, maybe because Jack, like, he kept, like, very blatantly during the conversation, kept coming back to, like, Lois and Clark, you know, about what they do and their, you know, their articles and how they got the information, you know, rather than just being like a natural conversation. It just felt very forced. Like he was trying to like stay on that topic no matter what. So maybe that tripped his super senses to thinking, why does he keep asking about this?
Right.
I don't
So
know.
like, maybe he had like a hidden recorder or something, and Clark just happened to stumble on the fact that this guy's got like guns and knives strapped to him.
Exactly. Especially since, you know, they were car bombed. You know,
Yeah.
their friend was car bombed, and then this lady shows up asking about a laptop, and they know they have it, and then suddenly here comes a guy who's very interested in that series of articles, you know, and yeah, it's Jimmy's dad, but still, it's like, something's weird here.
Yeah, and I kind of like the relationship that plays out between Jimmy and his dad, because, you know, here at this point, Jimmy's like quite apprehensive about his father. Because he's, you know, he's been an absent father his whole life, pretty much. And, you know, Jack's trying to warn Jimmy against Lois and Clark by telling him this stuff about how they're stealing secrets, something at this point he still believes to be true. And Jimmy's just like, no way, you know, he's totally on their side. And then that kind of flips a little later on. So it was a pretty good story arc for the relationship of Jimmy and his dad.
Yeah, it was definitely good to get some more with Jimmy. We've had a lot with Perry lately, so now we're giving Jimmy his due. So it was good. And we finally got to this episode that I knew was going to happen sooner or later.
Yeah.
Jimmy's dad. Finally.
Damn, I was really hoping that joke would play out.
I know, me too. I was like, every week, oh yeah, that's the one with Jimmy's dad.
Maybe we'll just keep it rolling for the sake of doing it.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, now this is where it gets a bit weird, because Sweet and Trevanian just all of a sudden decide that they don't trust Jack anymore.
Right.
And it's kind of because they think he's going soft because, his son is involved in all this.
Right.
But it seemed to me like the reason they brought him in was because his son was involved. Like he had an in here. And this is really what derails their plan, because Trevanian's plot here is that he's actually like afraid that Lois and Clark are going to uncover the fact that he is going to kill the heads of all the major law enforcement agencies of America, right? The CIA, the FBI, all those guys. He's going to kill them all, and he will be the only one who is still standing, and the NIA will, I guess, become everything. An amalgamation of all these government agencies.
Right, and he'd be the head of it, yep.
So, yeah, if they had just trusted Jack to do his job, maybe they would have gotten away with it, but instead they decide that they don't trust him and they're going to kill him after he does what they want, which, again, I'm like, why would they do that? Because he would still have done what you wanted him to do.
I wonder if there's maybe there was more to the story, about who Jack is. Maybe, maybe he's outside their power of influence, and maybe from the beginning, I don't know, from the beginning when they brought him in, I was thinking they brought him in because it's his son. That even in the beginning, they didn't necessarily trust him because they can send him on missions and stuff like that, but maybe he reports to someone who's outside of their influence.
And I guess they are technically lying to him about the fact that Lois and Clark were stealing stuff. That was the only way they could get him to do this job. If he'd known the actual truth behind it, then he probably wouldn't have gone along with it.
Right. So I don't know. There's possibilities there for why, why they don't trust him.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just like many of these episodes, I think the bad guys' plots are just sometimes a bit really?
They're a bit flimsy.
Yeah. But Jimmy, he's getting to work on decrypting this laptop, and since the laptop isn't with Lois and Clark, Jack breaks into the Daily Planet looking for it, and of course Jimmy's there, and they get in a bit of a fight, and while trying to escape, Sweet shows up, and she almost kills Jimmy, and this is the straw that broke the camel's back on Jack's behalf. This is where it all falls apart for Sweet and Trevanian, which, again, I'm seriously, she showed up and threatened his son. Jack was trying to get away, and sure, he had to take a few punches or whatever, but he was pretty much ready to just get out of there. And of course, he tells Lois and Clark about this, and Clark's like, I looked into your dad, he is totally not who he says he is, we can't find anything on the guy. And this is where that turn comes, and Jimmy's just like, I stood up for you guys to him, and now you're telling me that my dad isn't my dad, really, the guy I know. That was actually a really good scene for Justin Whalen too. I thought he did a good job with it.
Oh, definitely, yeah, because he looks up to Clark. He definitely looks up to Clark as a older brother type figure. And so to hear him dissing his dad was, that was major. He's torn, and he's ticked off. It was really well done.
Yeah, but he still continues on with his job though. He's still going to try and decrypt this laptop, and he heads off to Star Labs. Finally goes to Star Labs. Decides, this is something beyond my computer tech geniusness.
No kidding, really.
And of course Jimmy tells Jack about a plane. This is all the information that they got on it, and the plane is going to be taken down Saturday at noon, and of course it's the heads of all these government organizations. Sweet, of course, has to kidnap Lois. Because Lois gets kidnapped all the time, along with Jimmy, and Trevanian puts his plan into action, but Superman pretty much, he figures it out and just saves the day with a bit of Jack's help. At the end of the day, Jack's not really the bad guy here. He was just being misguided, right?
It was nice that they actually set off the actual weapon. So it actually hits the plane. They actually almost succeeded, but then of course, Superman comes in, saves the day. But it wasn't a thing where he gets there and he just freezes the controls, or blows up the control and it doesn't go off like he's done in so many other episodes. You know, it's he stops it by actually stopping, fixing the plane.
I thought it was funny because he goes to save the plane from crashing, and you see him through the window because all the guys are right there and they're around the table, and he rights the plane and he's sort of, just steering it along, I guess. And one of them turns to the window and goes, "Thank you, Superman." I'm like, I understand he has super hearing and stuff, but a normal person wouldn't be like, he can totally hear me out there.
Right.
But yeah, this was pretty good. pretty good episode. Didn't mind it.
Yeah, I liked it better than I thought I would. Because like I said, I remember this episode from long ago, and I was like, oh, yeah, it was an okay episode. But no, I actually enjoyed it.
And we get some bylines, of course. Lois and Clark talking about kids. Are they ready? Can they handle it? A nice little tie-in to go with the father-son theme, and Clark trying to figure out, like, it's not a case of having kids, but would I make a good father if I'm always out being being Superman? How am I going to juggle my life as Clark and being a husband and being Superman and being a father to children? You know, it's like adding more pressure, and he's really trying to figure it out. I really like that aspect.
Yeah, well, and it was a good juxtaposition with Jimmy's dad, who actually had kids and wasn't around, because of his job. I like the way they wrapped it up at the end, the way Lois and Clark were talking, and she says, it's not the job, it's the man. Jimmy's dad could have been there for Jimmy if he wanted to be, if he was really dedicated as a father, he could have been there, but he just wasn't. That wasn't who his character was. Whereas Clark, he's there for his family. He's always there for his family, his friends. So he's going to be fine when it comes down to it. He's not going to be an absentee father.
And at the same time, like, his folks have dealt with the pressures of having to deal with a superpowered child. They could always provide some free daycare.
Exactly. And since he's part human and part Kryptonian, he probably wouldn't even have full powers, so he wouldn't be super strong. He'd just be a little super strong. So now the thing I thought was weird and just felt awkward to me is after they try to recruit Jack in the park there or wherever he was, they cut to a scene where Trevannion and Sweet are drinking like champagne or something, and they have like a table set up with all this food on it. It made sense that Trevannion drinks and he goes, oh, swill. But then to have Sweetheart like automatically repeat him like exactly with the exact same word right after and the exact same action it was kind of ridiculous to me. I was like, what the heck's that about? That's weird.
I know. I think really it was just to set up that Trevannion had that secret knife, that little switchblade hidden away, because he kind of flicks that up and grabs a bit of cheese. And I'm like, seriously, that's how you're going to introduce this knife that comes back later, but he doesn't get a chance to use
nothing.
it.
Yeah, it's really nothing. I mean, they could have used a knife, just a normal knife that he had there, or a gun he could have used, That was weird.
Chekhov's hidden switchblade.
There you go.
Superman does get recognized as Clark Kent in this episode by Bud.
Yeah, why do they put that in there?
I don't know. He's a dying man.
Yeah, it's just weird. I mean, I know they, like maybe, a callback to when Lois was near death's door and she said her senses were heightened and she realized when Clark was Superman, remember? So maybe it has something to do with that. But it was just weird to hear that. I mean, they played it off with this music that was kind of like comical underneath. But I was like, that's weird to have that in there as well.
Maybe it was just to try and get us a bit more emotionally connected to Bud, since, as I mentioned, he's killed off in the opening scene that we meet him. So they're trying to draw a bigger connection to him than we would otherwise have. I don't know.
Right.
Maybe I'm just reading too much into it.
Yeah, we'll go with it.
And then the whole thing with Perry, because Perry pegs Jack as a rotten egg, right? And he says that to him. He goes, oh, I apologize. I figured you was a rotten egg. And Jack says he is a rotten egg. And it's handy in his line of work. And Perry says the same about himself.
Right.
What does that mean?
I don't know. Like Perry doesn't know. Does Perry know the whole story at that point, that Jimmy's dad was a spy?
I don't know.
Or does he just, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. What? What does that mean? Is that just a nonsense bit of dialogue or what?
I guess if he knows that Jimmy's dad's a spy, then he understands how work could have interfered, I guess, and that's sort of how you have to be sometimes, I guess. And when work interferes, sometimes things fall by the wayside. I don't know. It's because in the beginning he says, "What kind of man puts his job before his family?"
Yeah.
Now at the end he changes his mind, but I don't know. I don't know. Doesn't really make sense.
Good. I'm not the only one then.
I didn't think about it until now, but yeah, doesn't make too much sense.
All right. Well, let's do this week's quote vote, hey?
All right.
What's everybody standing around for? This a newspaper, not happy hour at Buckingham Palace. What are we here, the Daily Planet, or second stringers from the Weehawken Gazette?
Am I making myself perfectly clear?
All right, we had a few votes. Clear winner this week, so let's get straight into it. Cue the music.
a hick, and Vincent Price give a speech.
I am proud to announce the official returns are in, and the winner by 97% margin is Hick.
Thank you, thank you. All right, as a great man once said, it's not me you elected, but what I stand for. You all know who I'm referring to, my best friend and our former president, and you all know him as Hans Gruber.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yay.
There you go. And scene. The yay made it in.
And I changed it up to the Hans Gruber thing too, so.
Right. No, that's good. I like it.
Yeah, a bit of a short one, but I don't know. I think it's one of my more favorite ones of the season.
Yeah. There you go.
Okay, well, let's get into the second episode discussion today. And the episode is titled Tempest Anyone? Written by John McNamara and directed by Winrich Colby. And this originally aired January 21st of 1996.
Now, I'm going to tell you something, and as I do, you will begin to remember, like a dream recalled. Now, close your eyes and let the images unspool. We met on an extraordinary adventure. Before I was this elderly gentleman you see before you, I was a time traveler. I had journeyed into the future, seeking utopia, but found instead Tempest, a violent psychotic with a bitter hatred for Superman. He tried to kill Clark Kent as a baby, hoping to change future history. And you stopped him.
I remember. You're H.G. Wells. I know you. But you're... Well, I don't want to be rude, but you're a little...
Older. 17 years. The me you met was from 1899. The me you now see before you is from 1916.
Is it okay if I get a headache?
That's quite all right. After our escapade, Tempest escaped and built his own time machine. He did something rather unique with it.
As Superman deals with a bank robbery, the perpetrator confronts Lois, kidnapping her and placing her into a giant machine which promptly disappears and leaves her in a park, facing her own tombstone. H.G. Wells appears and retells the story of how they first met and defeated a man called Tempest, at which point Lois's memories return and she realizes the bank robber was indeed Tempest, returned from his imprisonment in the late 1800s. This time, however, instead of dealing with time travel, Tempest has managed to adjust his time machine to access alternate realities. Same Earth, different dimensions. As the two explore Metropolis, they note that it's grimmer than it should be. Guns everywhere, fights taking place all around them, citizens disrespecting the law at every turn with no Superman in sight. When a car speeds down the street, shooting at everyone in their way, Lois sees Clark walking and suddenly zip off, stopping the men. She heads to the Daily Planet to await his return and runs into the owner of the paper, James Olsen, who is backing Perry White for mayor, who is running against Tempest himself, who is running on a campaign warning people to be ready for the enemy. They express shock at seeing Lois, who died a few years ago on a story in the Congo, but H.G. Wells explains she was in a coma and in his care for years. When Clark returns and Lois kisses him, he has no idea who she is and introduces his fiancée, Lana Lang. As it turns out, in this world, the Kents died when Clark was young, leaving him to bounce around between homes, learning to hide his powers rather than be taken away and examined like a guinea pig in a lab. After Tempest kidnaps Lois and Tempest places her in a precarious situation, leaving Clark to come rescue her, she takes it upon herself to show this dimension's Clark about how things are in her world, how her Clark acts to save people and give them hope, dressing up as Superman in order to maintain his secret identity and private life. Clark's fiancée, a strong proponent of him not using his powers, is livid when she discovers that he has accepted his powers and is willing to go forth in full costume, saving lives publicly, and she leaves him. Meanwhile, Tempest prepares to debate Perry after placing a call to Lois using disguised voice, warning her that Perry White will die on stage unless she gets to the stage immediately. As Perry calls Tempest out on his campaign about the mysterious enemy, Superman arrives, ripping the back of the stage away to reveal the kidnapped Wells and Tempest's lackey with a bomb. Tempest turns the situation around on the Man of Steel, framing him as the enemy, using kryptonite to subdue him, and shows footage of Clark Kent saving Lois. As the crowd reacts in shock, Wells alerts Tempest that the bomb is still ticking and ready to blow. Tempest shoots his way out through the crowd, trying to save himself, showing his true colors while Superman grabs the bomb and saves them all, the crowd realizing the superhero has sacrificed his safety to protect them. Perry wins the election by a landslide, and Lois makes her goodbyes despite Superman wishing she could stay and help him learn how to be a Superman. Wells leaves him with a few words of wisdom as they return to their home dimension, Tempest recaptured and jailed for the robberies he had committed, leaving both worlds safe again.
So, you want to do an expose on Tempest?
Yes. But first, we should talk about us.
Us?
Well, actually, you. For instance, how many people know you're from another planet?
What?
That you can bend steel in your bare hands, leap tall buildings in a single bound?
Hey, keep your voice down.
That you came here as a baby in a spaceship.
Lana said this was gonna happen.
That the Kents found you and raised you in Smallville, Kansas.
I just didn't listen.
And from there, I'm sure things got a little different.
Okay. Just tell me one thing. Are you guys from the government?
Certainly not, my boy.
No. We're from another dimension.
More script to screen here. When Tempest and Lois meet, she recognizes him from the wanted poster. He's like, you don't recognize me? And she's like, wait, the wanted poster. And he says, oh, come on. I know I lost the beard, but I'm in politics now, and Joe Average doesn't trust facial hair. Which makes sense, because they explained where the beard goes,
Yeah.
Alt Jimmy in this dimension was supposed to have a mustache. I don't know why they didn't do that. That would have been neat,
I know, like a pencil mustache or something. That'd be
Yeah,
fun.
exactly. Like a Tony Stark, or his father. How his father had that thin mustache. It would have been great.
Yeah.
There was extra dialogue when Wells and Lois get captured. They come up with the gun. His Tempest's assistant, Domo, comes up, with the gun. And she says, oh, don't tell me. A mugging? And he says, more like a kidnapping. So, a little extraneous. We didn't really need it. Lois says, you're not going to get away with this. And Tempest says, you sound just like Lois Lane. In trouble again. Not going to get away with what, Lois? And then Lois says, well, with whatever you have planned. I don't know. It's a weird, it's a weird little interaction. I can see why they cut it. Doesn't really add anything. It's strange. There was a line where Tempest, was talking to Wells, giving his grandiose speech, but he ends it with saying, and now here you are, you want my machine. And it's right here in the building. It's like really giving away everything, like
Full digsing that stuff.
Yeah, it's like you just have to get away, and then the machine's downstairs. So go get it, So yeah, we didn't need that in there. Tempest instructs Domo to cut Wells loose right before the debate, for whatever reason. It's just an extra scene right before he goes out on stage, and he's like, cut him loose right before the debate, so it doesn't seem like he's been, I guess, kidnapped. That he was actually just backstage with the bomb and in collusion with Superman, maybe. I don't know.
Fair enough.
And then there's a scene right there also of Lois on the phone talking to Clark, saying, Perry White's supposed to die unless someone can save him. So that's just a little extra setup there, which we just assume that she tells Superman. That's why he shows up. We don't need to, see the scene. And then now from the Wikia, I didn't realize this, and I meant to go back and listen for the line, but I didn't. I forgot about it. They said when they're in this dimension, there's no Star Labs. Lana actually mentions Star Labs, but she calls it Sun Labs.
I did not catch that.
Yeah, I didn't catch it. I thought that was pretty cool. That's a nice little line there. I was like, nice. Yeah. And then the whole thing about now maybe you know about this, where he goes, Herb, if I wanted to kill her, I'd beat her to death with a frozen lamb chop and then eat it with a nice Merlot. That's a reference to a Hitchcock film. Do you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
Apparently there's a Hitchcock film where the wife kills the husband with a pork roast and then serves it to the detectives as they wonder, what was the murder weapon? How did this guy die? So that's the reference to the Hitchcock film. And then the Merlot bit is a Silence of Lambs reference where Hannibal says he likes his cannibal meals with a nice Chianti.
Yes. That's what I just figured the line was. I figured it was just the Silence of the Lambs reference. But no, I haven't actually seen that Hitchcock film, and I'm a big fan of Hitchcock. So
there you go.
Man, I'm going to have to track that down.
There you go. All right.
Are you sure about this?
I'm sure. But you're not, so let's get you comfortable.
How?
All right. Just put it down. Don't make me, you know.
Go on. Officer, maybe I can help. Give me the gun. Well, if everything's all right, I'll just be leaving.
Oh, wait. Thanks.
Superman.
Superman.
See, he thinks it's stupid.
That's a cool name. Thanks, Superman.
All right, so let's get into the main story and our lead here. Same city, different Superman.
Yeah.
Just to give it that slightest twist.
I like it.
Lois and Clark, it starts off, they're talking about the wedding, and Clark mentions that he ran into an old girlfriend, Lana Lang. Now, I'm not sure, but is this the first time they've mentioned Lana Lang in this series?
I think it is because, from what I remember, and I think from what our actions told us, back in season 1, when they went back to Smallville, they didn't have the rights to use that character.
Right, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, so they couldn't even mention her when they were in Smallville. So yeah, I think this is the first mention. And of course, later when we see her first appearance.
Ah, no, that's very cool, yeah. No, you're right, I forgot all about that, yeah, because his ex-girlfriend was like the sheriff or something, right?
Right, yeah. So I don't know what happened, like, behind the scenes to allow, you know, for them to use the Lana character. Maybe the success of the show, now it's in this 3rd season, they figure, all right, let's give them this toy. They can play around with this one, too.
Yeah, very cool. But, yeah, she's quite annoyed because Clark kind of said she could come to the wedding, and it was like a very last-minute thing. They'd never actually sent her an invitation, and apparently at this point, the wedding is looming over them.
Right.
Which is understandable.
Oh, yeah. No, it is understandable.
Especially if it's going to be big and flashy like Lois's mum wants it.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
But, of course, there has to be a thorn in somebody's side, and believe it or not, Tempest shows back up.
Yeah, looking a little different this time, though.
Just a little bit. He's got no beard.
Yeah, and he's wearing a suit, you know, like a normal 20th century suit. And
he's probably gotten used to time travel a bit more, obviously.
Now, we don't know, and I don't think they explain it in this episode, how he got away from his jail cell back in the 1800s.
Not only that, but somehow he also built a time machine.
Right, exactly.
So he must have been a pretty quick study. I'm not sure if he saw any blueprints for how to actually make it, but he has apparently recreated one. Not only that, but we're going to get into it here. He kidnaps Lois.
Right after a bank robbery that he committed.
Yes, of course, to get some gold.
Right.
He drops her at her own grave, where the death is undated, but the year is there, 1993. And, of course, this doesn't seem right.
No.
We know she didn't die in 1993.
Unless this is an M. Night Shyamalan thing, and we've been watching dead people the whole time. That's the twist, folks, if you haven't seen the episode yet.
Lois was dead the whole time. My mind was blown. No, she is approached by H.G. Wells, no longer played by the great Terry Kaiser.
I know, I was disappointed because I was like, wait, what? And I'm like, oh yeah, that's right, I remember. We have a different H.G. Wells now.
Yeah, and they give it a little bit of short shrift, but at least they address it. He explains to her what the deal is here, and it also services to give Lois her memory back of this whole event, because I think you and I talked about this before. We're pretty sure that Clark either always had his memory or got his memory back of the first experience with Tempest and Wells, right?
Yeah, that's what we said, yeah.
So, yeah, this is just a quick 2-minute scene. He reintroduces himself. She gets her memory back. She says, oh, I do know you. And he also explains that he's actually from a few years further
Right.
than she would know him. So he's actually older, and that's why he kind of looks a bit different, played by a completely different actor who is not Terry Kaiser.
Exactly.
I can go with it. I mean, I, as much as I wish it was Terry Kaiser, at least we got the Wells character, and it is played just a little bit different.
Now, when she first pops up there into the her gravesite, that scene, I don't know if it's the way they shot it or the camera angle or something about that scene really reminded me of when we watched Sliders, when the end of or the beginning of season 2, where Quinn is seeing his friends at his gravesite. You remember that scene?
Yeah, that's right, because it ended with that cliffhanger of him being shot.
That's right. Spoiler alert for all those who haven't seen it. But yeah, it's the way I think it's the way they shot it, like the upward angle or something with the camera. It just reminded me of that scene, particularly in Sliders when he's at his gravesite. But that's not the only Sliders reference we're going to have here.
Well, before we do get into it, just throwing a little film knowledge at you here.
Oh, okay.
They do what they call a Dutch tilt.
Okay.
And it's kind of where you don't film something straight on. Like, you don't make a clear, steady angle of something. You sort of just tilt it slightly to the left or right to sort of, it throws it off balance. Hence, throwing the viewer off balance.
Gotcha. So that's maybe that's why, yeah.
A little camera trickery.
I did not know about the Dutch tilt. I've heard of the Dutch oven, but not the Dutch tilt. So now my knowledge. See, the more you know.
We do get very Sliders here because now, correct me if I'm wrong, but Tempest does have a time machine. He hasn't created a machine that creates parallel universes. What he's actually done is kind of Back to the Future 2'd this and done something in the past that created a tangent timeline. Am I right?
They don't really explain. Okay, that could be what they've done, but I think the way that they're trying to go about it is that he managed to make, obviously he must have made the time machine to get him forward, from the 1800s. But then somehow I think that he's made adjustments to the machine to allow it to access alternate dimensions. Because they don't really specify that he went back and, changed something in Superman's past so, like, maybe the Kents would die early. I think they could have. They could have done something like that if they had expanded the story out a little more. Instead of one episode, do it as 2 episodes. That would have been, really cool. But I think that the way that H.G. Wells explains it is that, he's done something. He said he's done something unique to the machine. And he says it now goes to alternate dimensions instead of just time. So somehow he has an understanding of alternate dimensions and was able to make adjustments to it. He's a very, very quick study, like you said. So I don't think it's specifically like Back to the Future 2, which would make sense with just a time machine. And Back to the Future 2 came out before this episode, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, they could have, pinched the idea from there. But I don't know. I think they're just going for the whole, this is just an alternate dimension thing, because they do have that in the DC comics. There are, alternate dimensions. They have a ton of them. They even had a crisis back in 85. So this was way before that. A crisis in 85 where they took all those multiple dimensions and crushed them into one, to kind of clean it up and make it easier for, readers to understand what was going on and who belonged where. So they do have multiple universes in the DC comics, so there's precedent for that. And it has nothing to do with time travel. It's just that's the way the Earths work. It's kind of like in Flash these days. If you're watching Flash, how they have the Earth 1 and Earth 2. It's the same type of thing. It's not having to do with time travel. It's just it's an alternate dimension right there at the same place. So I think that's where they're going with it. They use the mechanics of the time travel that we had previously to explain why they're there. Just with an adjustment.
And I guess I can agree with that. It's pretty much the Sliders device that can also time travel, pretty much.
Yes.
He's got both capabilities here. And pretty much what he's doing is he's going between parallel dimensions and he'd commit robberies and stuff like that just to make himself richer in this one parallel world where I guess he kind of likes it because Superman's not around and he's getting rich and maybe becoming mayor.
Yeah, and no one knows that he's robbing places in that dimension because he's not. He's totally, free of any crimes in that dimension. So it's a good deal.
And of course, Lois and Wells, they're going to do the logical thing here. Try and find Clark. We need Clark.
Yes.
We need Superman in order to stop Tempest and whatever his plot is, and that's going to be revealed a little later on. So they head over to the planet, trying to find him, and suddenly there's a bunch of people shooting guns out of a car.
Yeah.
And they see Clark there, but Clark sort of just runs away.
Right.
And they're like, what the hell is this all about? And it kind of turns out that Clark isn't Superman. He's there, but apparently his parents died when he was really young, and he kind of bounced around foster homes and kind of got attached to the Lang family, and that's why he's really good friends with Lana Lang in this world. And not only that, he's engaged to her. And she has kind of convinced him that if he was to reveal who he really was, then the government would take him away and do all kinds of tests. So he doesn't actively use his powers in public.
It seems like they have a history, though, of him using his powers, you know, to try to help people, because he feels that need to help people. But like every time he does, he knows he has to deal with Lana, you know, like talking him down from that. Because she's, I don't know. Like, do you know much about the Lana Lang character?
No, other than she was his like childhood or high school sweetheart. I don't really know too much about her.
Because she was in, I mean, she's been in the comics, you know, ever since they, I think it's when they introduced Superboy back in, was it the 50s, I think, when they first started doing the Superboy comics, I believe. So she's been around a long time. She was in the Superman movies with Christopher Reeve. She was in there when he was in the first movie. And then she came back, I think it was the fourth. Was it the fourth movie? She was in two of them, from what I remember. She was played by Annette O'Toole, actually, from the mother who plays Ma Kent in Smallville. She actually played Lana Lang back in the Christopher Reeve movies. Yeah. Anyway, she's like, you know, she's from, you know, Smallville, and she's very friendly, just like all Smallvillians are, and everything like that, and very down to earth character, and humble and polite and everything. You know, and even when they had Lana in the Smallville series, you know, we had Kristen Cruick as Lana. She was great too. She was very down to earth, very, you know, what you would expect from, you know, a girl living out there in the Midwest. And then you have this Lana Lang in this episode, and she just annoys me. She's so she was getting on my nerves.
Yeah.
Did not like this interpretation of Lana Lang. It just, to me, this Lana Lang did not grow up in the Midwest. Somehow she was, uprooted from her home and grew up like in New York City, you know, something like that, where she's just like bitter and just like, you know, cares about just all the wrong things. I could not, when I remember seeing this for the first time and this was Lana Lang, I was like, that doesn't feel like Lana. This feels like some random girl. So it just annoyed me a little bit that this is the interpretation of Lana Lang that we get.
What I'm thinking is that they're going to reintroduce this character, because this version of Lana Lang that we see in this episode is from the parallel universe.
Right.
In the real universe, she could be a perfectly lovely person.
That could be true.
So I don't know if we're going to see her again. We may.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Her accent didn't come off very Midwest. It actually sounded more like a Miami accent. Mostly because I know this actress from CSI Miami.
Oh, see, I don't even know who she is.
Yeah. So a more southern-ish accent.
Right. Yeah, I could see that.
So, I don't know, yeah. If they reintroduce this character, she could be perfectly lovely. But you're right, it doesn't feel right. And it could just be that they're playing her differently because we're in a parallel universe. We'll find out, I guess. But some more changes in this universe, which were quite fun. While they're at the planet, they find out that Jimmy is a tech billionaire.
Yes.
Who owns the planet, and he's actually pushing Perry to run for mayor.
Mm-hmm. I like that.
It was a bit of fun.
Nice turnaround for the two.
Yeah, he's walking around, Perry's walking around calling him Mr. Olsen and all this stuff, and Jimmy's trying to tell him what's what and all this, and it took a little while for me to pick up that, okay, Perry's still in charge around the planet. Like, that hasn't changed. But Jimmy's kind of like the James L. Jones character, rather than that character coming in and buying up the planet. Maybe Jimmy did instead.
And it seems like he's the campaign manager too, the way he's highly involved with it, at least.
Yeah, like he wants this to happen because, I don't know, it'd be good for the paper or something, whatever.
Exactly.
But it was good fun, and I think Justin Whalen did a good job on it. I think Lane Smith did a fantastic job, sort of mixing up the characters a little bit.
Oh, yes, yep.
And it turns out that Lois was actually presumed dead whilst out in the Congo doing a story.
Right.
So they're all kind of excited to see her. And of course, Wells is there and he just says, oh, I scooped her up. She was in a coma and she came out of it like 2 days ago and bang, we're here.
Yep.
So that problem solved. And she quickly realizes that her and Clark aren't together. He's with Lana. And this kind of sets us up for what's going to happen here. She's got to convince Clark to be Superman. And I like this, her helping him make the suit and convincing him that he can go out there, that it can be a force for good, and him realizing that this is something that he really wants. He's just been stymied his whole life.
Something he's always wanted to do because he felt it's just his nature. Clark's nature is to have that need to help people, just to do the right thing, which, is interesting. I think I'm trying to remember. I thought that they said in the show that his parents died when he was 10. So that gives, that means he lived with his parents up until he was 10. So he did get some of that moral upbringing from the Kents. They would have instilled that in him at a young age. So I'm assuming that's where he, gets this internal, thing like, well, I have to help people. It goes back to that story I was telling you about. Was it last week or the week before about the Superman Red Sun, where he lands in Russia and is brought up with a different set of values, so he's not the all-American hero that we have, that we've come to know. Instead, he becomes, a master, commander of the people or something, over there in Russia. So it's just interesting, So I think he did have some time with the Kents, so that's where he gets this, I want to help people from.
But when he talks about them, I mean, he has a fondness for them, but
Right.
you can tell his relationship with them maybe isn't as strong as it is.
Oh, definitely.
They're alive in our world, of course. They died when he was 10 here. So he often
Right.
just refers to them as, oh, the Kents were really good to me, for a
Yeah,
long time.
exactly.
I bounced around foster homes and stuff. So you can sort of feel that disconnect there and why he would be a little withdrawn. But when she finally gets him in the suit and gets in his arms and they go flying around and stop this guy who's having a Mexican standoff with this cop, and
Right.
the cop's like really grateful too. He's like, yeah, thanks, Superman, but
It's a cool name.
But the whole time Clark's like turning to Lois and saying, "Oh, I look stupid. He thinks he thinks it's a stupid name. Can we
Right.
stop this already?" But everyone's on board, and this is kind of where we get what Tempest's plot is here, like the reason for bringing Lois and Wells here, which, in my opinion, is a bit of a stupid plan.
Because he wants to become mayor, and his plan is to recreate Superman here. His whole campaign has been based on be ready for the enemy, watch out for the enemy. I will protect you from the enemy, and no one knows who the enemy is. And his plan is when Superman shows up to explain that he is the enemy, and this is who I've been trying to save you from. I have kryptonite somehow, and so I'm going to vanquish this enemy for you, and then you will elect me mayor.
Like I said at the beginning, it seemed like he had the sweet life there, and he even talks it up, I'm in a world with no Superman, ha 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 ha, this is so good.
Exactly.
So the fact that he wants to create Superman in order to vanquish him and become mayor, I mean, it's not like he's going for president here.
Maybe this is his first step, on the way, to becoming president, and then maybe trying to, become all powerful to take over the world eventually.
I know he feels like he'd be prepared to fight Clark.
Right.
Like he's ready with the kryptonite and all that stuff. But still, on Superman's worst day, he could take out Tempest, no worries.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So, it's not the best plan in the world, but, it's still interesting because it's Tempest.
He's a great character.
Yeah, he puts Lois out on that ledge, all blindfolded and stuff. It's an architect's nightmare. The whole thing's just falling apart underneath her feet. But Superman comes and saves her, and they get into this whole debate where he's going to reveal Superman and try and take him out.
All right, so then we had this thing with Wells asking about, why is there no Superman here? Was it the fact that the Kents died, that Superman never came to be, or was it the fact that there's no Lois Lane in this timeline that, sort of like threw him into trying to save her, which led him to becoming, Superman. So it's like, how did this happen? Why isn't there a Superman in this world?
And I think this is what might have led me to that Back to the Future 2 theory,
Right.
Creating an alternate timeline or something. Because like you said, they don't really go into it. Did Tempest go to a certain point, maybe kill the Kents, cause this car accident that Clark
Right.
gets into or something like that in order to diverge the timeline? It's hard to say. I think all these theories are kind of thrown around and they don't quite pin one down.
I like the idea that it's kind of because of Lois, because he, like, obviously, like we said, he was brought up by the Kents and they taught him this, this right and wrong type thing, at least until he was, 10. But he sort of, I think he held on to those lessons, but he didn't quite know how to take that and really help people. Like he knew he could do it, like, just let me zip over here and help this person, zip over there, help that person. But he didn't take it to like the next step. And then, like, since there is no Lois Lane in this world, like he's helping out whoever he sees, people he sees around him. But he, like, when he had that connection with Lois back in, season 1, the pilot and everything, they just had that connection. He really, just really liked her. I think that's sort of what really pushed him, to become this, so he could have a private life as Clark Kent, and then he could also still help people. So he had the opportunity to be two different people. Like, at this point, he's engaged, he has someone already, and she doesn't really approve of him saving people. So he's not even thinking about trying to have two separate lives.
Exactly. It's a good demonstration of how the people around him have shaped his life and helped him to embrace being Superman. It's proof positive too with Lana as well, because she leaves him at the end. She says, look, I know this is what you want to do. You want to be out there and you want to be doing this. And she can't handle that. And she just walks away from the whole thing. But before all that happens, of course, Tempest's plan just backfires on him.
Right. Yeah, major.
Yeah, you planted a bomb or something, but it wasn't supposed to be activated, but then it was.
Yes.
And when he realizes this, he wants to just get the hell out of there. It's like George Costanza in that Seinfeld one with the fire.
That's right.
Pushing women and children out of the way.
Exactly.
So he's just shamed by this, by everyone. Totally. And Perry wins by a landslide. Another just a weird throwaway bit is that Elvis used to be the president, and he's Perry's best friend.
I know. That was cool. It was a nice little touch, because we don't get a lot of Elvis anymore. That was all season 1. Once they got away from season 1, there were not that many Elvis references. So it's nice that we brought him back here.
And then we have this whole scene of Clark trying to convince Lois to stay with him so he can learn more about being Superman. But she's like, I got to get back to my Clark. She loves him. He's Superman, but he's not her Clark.
That was pretty tough, that scene. That was well done, because it's he feels this connection to Lois because the two of them, are soulmates, they belong together. So he feels the connection. It's just not, for her, it's not the right connection because it's the wrong Lois and the wrong Clark, they need to be with their others. So it's you can see how conflicted he is. He really wants her to stay because he feels this love, but it's just for the wrong Lois. So it's just, I thought it was a well done scene. You can tell she was conflicted too, it is Clark, but it's not her Clark.
Yeah, and not her Superman as well, they kind of meld the two together. So, it was a good ending. As for Tempest, somehow he ends up back in our world.
Well, they use his machine.
But was Tempest with them when they came back? I was a bit confused by that.
I think that he must have, Wells must have listen to me. Wells must have taken a quick trip back to our dimension to have him, be arrested for his crimes or whatever, then pop back to get Lois.
Clark says that she was only gone for 10 seconds, but he says it was the worst 10 seconds of his life, thinking that he had lost her. So they're back in each other's arms. But, it was maybe a little bit of a flimsy ending there, but I was fine with it at the end. And I think all round, it was a pretty damn good episode. I liked it.
Yeah, well, I especially liked the ending between alternate Superman and Lois. I thought it was just great. So it lifted it up for me.
Yeah. All right. Well, just a couple of bylines we have. What was with that "I Am Superman" song? While they're flying around, getting used to all that stuff. That was 90s to the max.
Well, you know what that was? That was REM. So you nailed it. It is 90s to the max. Yeah, that was an REM song. And I remember that being pretty popular back in the day because this was, 96? So this was I was in college. And yeah, it was a pretty popular song that I remember. I even used the song because I went on a road trip to, where I grew up. And on the way there, I stopped in Metropolis, Illinois, which is the home of Superman Museum. And, you know, they have a Superman statue and all this other stuff. And I took a lot of pictures and video, and I actually used that song as the soundtrack to make a little video of the whole trip to Metropolis. It was fun. But yeah, it's a great song. I don't know, like, I don't think it was written specifically for this. I think it was out there. They just, you know, people write songs about Superman. There's a ton of Superman songs out there. If you just like go into one of your streaming services and look up Superman, there's a bunch of streaming or a bunch of songs written about Superman and Lois Lane. There's some good ones out there. The other thing is now with this world, you know, we have a Superman that has no secret identity. So does he keep his job at the planet now, where people know that he's Superman? They're like, well, why are you here? Because look, there's stuff going over there and, you know, across the world in Africa that needs your attention, or there's stuff over here that needs your attention. Like now he kind of doesn't have a private life anymore. Is he just going to be the kind of Superman where he's just going 24/7 now? It
does really make me think of Sliders, like when we were having our Sliders conversations, and there was so many times when we were like, oh, wouldn't it be great if we went back here? Or wouldn't it be great if we maybe just had a few episode arc where we're on a certain dimension and sort of get to know it a bit and learn a bit more, or find out what happened after the Sliders had fixed whatever the problem of the day was. It's the same thing here. Like, it would have been so interesting to sort of just see how everything played out in this dimension with this new Superman who doesn't have a secret identity and everyone knows who he is, and he doesn't have Lois Lane. It would be fascinating.
I was disappointed when I was watching this episode. When we got near the end, I was like, oh, this is the end. There's no more. This is the end of this episode, because I remember there being more to this storyline, but I guess I was wrong. But no, because I was so disappointed. I was like, what the heck? I don't, there's got to be more to the storyline. I remember it being so epic and I just loved it. So I was like, all right, I gotta figure this out. So I went ahead and I looked at the IMDb for Lane Davies, who plays Tempest, and he plays Tempest 3 more episodes. So we are getting him back. So there is more to this storyline. So I think we're going to be probably going back to this dimension. I don't remember the details of it, but remember when we were talking about this episode coming up, I was like, oh, it's so epic, and it's more than just, it's like a 2-parter and all this, but it wasn't. So that must be coming.
I must say, my boy, I envy you.
Me? Why?
With every eye upon you, every breath held in anticipation, you hold in your hands a world waiting to be shaped.
I'm just not sure that I can...
You can take on such great responsibility? What do you think Shakespeare meant when he wrote, in apprehension, how like a god? It's not that gods are anxious about their responsibilities, but with such great weight comes great understanding. Trust that, Clark. And trust that you found your true destiny, and that in you a once hopeless world has found its future. Good luck to you.
And so it's with great pleasure I introduce another close friend, Clark Kent, a.k.a. Superman. Now, Superman has a few things he'd like to tell us all about himself.
He's quite a man, the Clark Kent of this world.
I'd just like to talk about us for a second, our future. Now, it can be...
I just wish he didn't have to be alone.
The hardest lesson is that love can be so fair to some and so cruel to others.
All right, so let's get into some back issues.
It's just so funny to me that now that we're in 96, I'm actually finding stuff about these episodes. It's so odd. Like, what happened to those forums in 95 that there's like nothing on there? It's just, it's the oddest thing. So for the dad who came in from the cold, they really liked the fight scene between Jimmy and his dad, even though he didn't know it was his dad. They said it was great that there was no Superman in it to save the day. It was just Jimmy, at his, fighting away there. And he actually got some good licks in there against his dad. And then they mentioned the director, Alan J. Levy. They said that he is one of the best directors working in TV right now. So apparently he must be well known during this time. Must have been doing a lot of other TV shows at the time. They were wondering, and I did too. I was wondering this. When Superman pops down in front of Jimmy and his dad, Superman flares out his cape, and the bullets bounce off his cape. Now, isn't he supposed to have an aura around him, that kind of, like, protects him? But, like, when the clothes are a little bit farther away from him, they can get ruined.
Yeah, right.
So it doesn't quite follow there, because the cape sort of billows out away from his body.
Yeah, this is where the aura thing kind of falls apart a bit, right?
It was a neat effect. It was a neat shot where he comes down in front of him and boom, out flares his cape and the bullets bounce off. It was a neat looking scene for sure.
When you really start to think about it, it's falling apart a little bit.
Now for the Tempest episode, someone was saying, and this is what because I thought it was a two-parter as well, at least, but someone said they wanted this to be a two-parter so bad where it gets to the end of the episode and Tempest, has Lois in his clutches or something like that. And they wanted Tempest to say something like, "Oh, the tension is unbelievable. The only thing that could ruin this moment is if the screen faded to black and we had to wait a week to find out what happens next." And that's something he totally would do.
Yeah. Well, in the episode, he said the only thing that would ruin this now is an ad break. And then it goes to black for an ad break.
I know. It was perfect. It was great.
We did get the "Dar" thing, though. If only I lived in a world without Superman. Duh, I do.
Exactly, yeah. So I agree with them. I'm like, that would have been awesome to have that as a two-parter and have that be one of the lines. He does break the fourth wall like that, It's kind of nice. They said it was heart-wrenching hearing him say he couldn't save his parents, like just knowing how close he is to his parents in our dimension. It was like, to hear that he couldn't do anything to save him was like, heart-wrenching for the one poster, and especially also at the end when Lois walks away from him and he's left there at the podium, and you could see he's just looking back at her and he trying to use his super will, to get her to stay. There's nothing he can do. They said it's just very emotional. It's very emotional. More than one poster said, things got a little misty over here. This would have been interesting to do. I don't think the actor would have come back and done it. They wanted to have Michael Landis, the original Jimmy Olsen, come back and guest star as Jimmy, as the head of the planet, or the publisher of the planet, which I thought that would
just throw Tracy Scoggins in there too while we're at it.
Right? Why not? Yeah. She could be the campaign manager following him around or something like that. That would have been awesome. Just, alternate dimension where they continued on the show. But I don't think either actor or actress would have done that because, they kind of probably don't have they don't feel good about how it was left. So, or maybe they're fine. Maybe they would have been fine with it. Don't want to burn your bridges, of course. They said they were glad that they didn't do the wrap up nicely ending. Where everything's fine and all hunky-dory at the end of the episode, because they were thinking that, they're definitely going to have Lois from Earth 2 show up. She was apparently definitely saved from the Congo, and she shows up, and now, her and Clark can be together in this dimension, and it's all happy, joy. They were glad that they didn't do that. It leaves it open. Definitely leaves it open for in the future that maybe she could come back, and he could find his Lois. But they said if Lois does come back to this Earth 2 dimension, how would her and Clark get on? Because it's a whole different dynamic now. She's been, away for 3 years because she was supposedly dead. He's a seasoned reporter now. Would he have the same fascination with her that he did in our dimension? Or would it be slightly different? Would he be pushing too hard because he knows where it could go because of his interaction with our Lois? It's interesting. They said it's interesting to think about, where that whole relationship could be, if she does show up in his universe.
Exactly. It's going back to that wanting to know more about Earth 2.
Yeah.
Spend some time there, see what the story is.
Even in our world, Lois was attracted to Clark in the very beginning. It was just more of a physical thing, I think, at first, But still, there was some attraction there. So maybe this Lois would be attracted to this Clark. I don't know. Yeah, definitely would like to see that develop more. The picture that Lois showed of Superman in her wallet, that picture she has there was a promo picture, of course. So it's from the early days when he had that Thor cape with the shoulder pads.
Yeah.
So they were like, how come when she made the costume for him in this dimension, it didn't have the same shoulder pads? They were like, why is it like the modern suit that he's using in our dimension instead of being like that original one, since they're basing it off that picture?
Oh, maybe she knows, he had to go through all this trial run with all these different versions, so she just went straight to the one that she knows works best.
And they were saying it would have been nice, since this was a different dimension, to have a different S insignia, sort of like in the comics. If you follow the other dimensions they have. The Superman S is not always the same. It's slightly different, stylized. It looks a little different from Earth to Earth. And they said that would have been a nice little touch to have it just be just slightly different because it's a different dimension.
Yeah, that would have been cool.
And then there was one person, which I thought this was great. They mentioned that this episode was just like Sliders and how much they missed Sliders. And I was wondering, why did they miss Sliders? And I guess this was this episode came out in between seasons 1 and 2. So season 1 was, of course, short. There was only so many episodes. And then season 2, came out a couple months after this episode. So they were in between the two. So that's why they're saying they missed it.
Oh, nice. I love it. All right, well, let's get into the personal ads. A couple of little points here. Starting off with just a little bit of feedback that came in on the Facebook page from Phil Bates. And he's around the Facebook page. He, likes to vote on the quote vote and comment on a few things, but he actually wrote a post this time, and I thought it was quite funny. I had a good laugh out of it, so I thought I'd mention it. He wrote, "Am I the only one who noticed in Lois and Clark that Clark solves so many of his problems by just hurling stuff into space? Case in point, I just watched Homer's Where the Herd Is, where he cast out a killer microwave. Missed opportunity. They should have ended the final episode on a shot of Earth, now with a ring of random objects orbiting it."
I like it. I like that. That's
true.
A good point.
He has solved a couple of problems by just hurling something into space.
That would have been neat just to have just like a little. You don't even have to spend much time to it. Just like a pan out, and there's all this stuff all around the Earth.
There's the microwave, Lois's ring. Oh no, wait a minute. You wouldn't have got that back, didn't you?
Right.
There's that icicle with the virus in it.
I like it. Good point.
Yeah, so I had a bit of a giggle at that. I thought it was funny.
Well done, sir.
All right, so our next issue, we will be discussing I Now Pronounce You and Double Jeopardy.
All right, so I Now Pronounce You, actually. Come on. That's got to be the wedding.
It's got to be. Has to be.
If
it's
the big
not,
wedding.
I'm going to be very disappointed.
Now, on the forums, on the Zoomway forums, they've been talking a little bit about what's coming up. Not spoilery yet, but just about how the marriage arc is coming, And it reminds me of the marriage arc. So I know, obviously this is the wedding episode, but the next one called Double Jeopardy, I remember why it's called Double Jeopardy. And I'm just going to say it has to do with, doubles, clones.
Okay, right. Because I was thinking Double Jeopardy is when you get tried for a crime, you can't be tried for the same crime again.
Right.
But, yeah, if it's a play on words, with clones or something, I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah, and I think this is the storyline that either this divides your love or hate, I think, of season 3 with this storyline, I believe. So we'll get into it next week, because that's it for this issue of the Rewatch Podcast. Keep up with listener interaction by liking our Facebook page at facebook.com/Rewatch Podcast or facebook.com/Lois and Clark Rewatch. And don't forget to follow the show on Twitter at Rewatch Pod, or visit our webpage at rewatchpodcast.podomatic.com, which has links to some of our favorite sites there, such as zoomway.net, the folc.wiki.com, and supermanhomepage.com, plus links to our archive of film rewatch episodes.
And as always, you can write us an email or record a voice message and send it to the rewatchpodcast@gmail.com. And also, if you've enjoyed the show, please consider giving us a rate and review on iTunes. Very helpful. And you can help support us by heading over to patreon.com/rewatchpodcast, where you can make a monthly contribution as little as $1. And of course, we're also up on YouTube, so you can just search Rewatch Podcast and subscribe today. And just a quick announcement too, we are actually just going to take a week off. I'm on holidays, and surprisingly, I'm a little bit busier than I usually am when I'm at work.
Yep.
But as always, thank you for joining me, Tom.
Oh, yes.
And I would just say, until next time, love can be fair to some and so cruel to others.
We gotta fly.
The Rewatch Podcast is not associated with Warner Brothers Television, ABC, Gangbuster Films Incorporated, or Roundelay Productions.
Don't believe everything you see on TV.
The use of any and all copyrighted material is only for parody, news analysis, critique, or educational purposes as provided in United States Code Title 17, aka Fair Use.
Let's get legal on this.
Music provided by Kevin McCloud at incompetech.com.
Great shades of Elvis.
Copyright 2016, The Rewatch Podcast.
Wear your beepers. We'll be in touch.
Hi, Hi, Rewatch Podcast listeners. I'm Cory.
I'm Tom.
And I'm Nathan.
First off, let me say that we have all had a blast doing the Rewatch Podcast. Every week, we put out another episode for free for you. And although we enjoy these discussions with each other, we truly do this for you guys out there in podcast land.
That's right, Cory. But we are here today to tell you about Patreon. Every week, there are costs involved in podcasting about film and television, including hosting and bandwidth charges, our own personal internet usage, and film or show rentals and purchases. So, we're asking you to become a Patreon supporter.
If you can afford as little as $1 to throw our way per month, it would really help us keep the lights on. And if you want to send $100 our way every month, we wouldn't turn that down either. But it's your choice, and we appreciate the support you bring.
As always, we strive to bring you the best quality shows we can create, and we hope that you enjoy them. So head on over to patreon.com/rewatchpodcast to become one of our patrons and show your support for the Rewatch Podcast.
And if we get enough patrons, we may even be able to produce exclusive content just for the supporters in the form of simply getting episodes before the main feed release, or even bonus film discussion episodes as a thank you for your support. The website again is patreon.com/rewatchpodcast.
Thanks, everyone.